Hi everyone, welcome back to my channel. It's Michelle, still playing with the October release for Marlene's products. And today I am actually going to use both the stamp sets that I haven't used again because I thought it would be quite difficult to do just one stamp. So either the fish or the coral. I felt like they needed each other. So what I'm doing here is I'm just playing around with some embossing powders, and I'm just going to emboss these corals. I initially did stamp them out on some watercolor paper, but the fish worked fine, but I wanted to do something different with the corals. I wanted to give them a little bit more texture and dimension. And I mean, I just really, really love playing with embossing powder and seeing the color change when that powder melts, like you can see now. I think it's just so magical. So I'm just using a couple of different colors, and really what I'm trying to do is figure out what is the right amount of embossing ink to put on these stamps to make them stamp well. So I'm using a combination of my Wow embossing ink pad, and I've also got an embossing ink dauber. So I did find that the dauber works better on the more solid stamps, and then the ink pad actually works better on the finer detail ones. So once I've got all of those melted, I am going to fussy cut them. Don't worry, I'm not going to make you watch me fussy cut 7 million corals and fish. I actually took these to the TV and I cut them while I was watching TV. For the fish, I decided that because they are in water, they are going to get watercolors. So I'm just going through and I'm going to just stamp these out on watercolor paper. So because the watercolor paper isn't smooth, they didn't always stamp very well, but it doesn't matter because I know that when I'm done coloring, I'm going to go in with my black paint pen and I'm going to define the edges anyway. And it doesn't matter on what paper I do that. That is normally what I do anyway. So I'm just going to go in with these watercolor paints from Marlene and just add lots and lots of color to these little fishies or to the sea creatures. And I'm going to try and make them as bold and as bright and as beautiful as possible. And then I know that I'm not going to use them all on one page in one go, but I am building just a little stash of paper elements for myself to use when I need fish. I do struggle a little bit with working with I guess something so specific. So obviously these are themed and they are fish, and in my mind I feel like the only way I'm ever going to use this is if I do little underwater scenes. So I do struggle with it, but I think it's a good exercise to maybe push myself a little bit out of my comfort zone. So when I'm done with putting the color down, and do make sure that my paint is dried well, I'm going to go in with my coloring in pencils, and then I'm just going to do shading. I'm just showing you 2 here that I've done on camera, and then the rest I actually took off camera and I just played around with them. But this is the process. So I add coloring in pencil, then I go in and define the lines, and then I'll go in and add some white highlights once I'm happy with the colors on there. If you were thinking there's no way that Michelle's going to be cutting around those fins, especially on this purple fish, then you would be right. There's no way that I'll be fussy cutting around that. So I just cut them off, and then when I use them on my page, I will just actually stamp the fish first and then stick this over the top. to get those fins still in the picture. The same will be with this little flower crown that the seahorse has on. I did try and color it, but it is so tiny and finicky. So once I use the seahorse, I didn't use it in today's project. That's why I'm telling you. Uh, once I do use it, I will probably just stick some paper elements over the top of the flowers that are there, just to save myself the trouble of trying to color in such tiny, minute little details. It's beautiful, of course, but for me, I just couldn't be bothered, really. And also, if I've got a paper element over there, it will just make it look a little bit more interesting. So these are the 2 stamp sets, and these are all my little elements cut and ready to use. And I decided to use my handy size journal because I think the fish just fit perfectly on this size paper instead of the A5. I guess the A5 in the in the perfect size would work, but yeah, I just felt like I needed a smaller surface because the fish are much smaller. So what I've done there is I just put out some mermaid paint and also breeze, and I've just watered it out. Again, the fish are in water, so I wanted a watery look. I don't think I achieved it, but anyway, it's fine. Then over the top of that, once I've dried it, I'm just doing some reductive stenciling with Marlene's new lacy mandala stencil, and I'm using some azure for that. It's a nice dark aqua color, and I thought that looked really nice on this paper. And then I'm also going in with some Kermit, just to stick to kind of bluish, greenish tones that's underwater. Once that is dry, I'm going to start placing my corals. No, I'm not. First, I'm going to stamp some corals onto the page. So I know that these are barely going to be seen at the end, but I did want the illusion of layers and layers of corals in front of each other and behind each other. So you'll see that coming together. And I'm just using some blues and greens just to stamp those onto that paper. And I'm sticking to the left-hand side and the bottom because I wanted to just use that space for the corals instead of the whole page. When I did the fussy cutting for these corals, I didn't cut them. Obviously, it's a nightmare to get in between those spaces. So I tried it with my craft knife, but then they started tearing because it's so tiny. So all I'm doing now is I'm watering down some azure paint, and I'm just going over the top of all of those corals on the embossed corals, because you're not going to see that on the actual coral itself. It'll just seep into the paper that it's on, and that's just going to help it blend in a little bit more. I didn't want to put them on just with that stark white background. I think it would have been very obvious. Like you can see on that pink one there's a little spot that I missed there that's still white. So it won't look not or realistic. Not that it's a realistic page, but it just wouldn't blend in well enough. So I'm placing my little corals down, and then once I'm happy, I'm going to start gluing them down. Naturally, they're not going to go down the same way that I put them there just now. But at least I had the idea of where things should go and how many things I will need to make it work. So I'm using Marlene's sticky glue, and I'm just building this little coral scene on the foreground, and you can still see the stamping behind it a little bit. So there is like a background, a middle ground, and a foreground now. So I quite like the way that it turned out, actually. even though I was a little bit nervous of how I'm going to make it work. But here we are, making it work. I needed something to cover that little corner there, but everything I had didn't quite fit until I then eventually found this little piece. And earlier this week, I had the little message in a bottle that I didn't use, and I knew that I wanted to use that one. So that's going to go down. And then I think I grab a couple of starfish as well, and I pop them in that bottom section as well. Now I'm going to glue down my little fishies. I think they came out quite cute, and I really like the pop of color on that blue background that they add. So just faffing around to see which ones I like best. And then I went with this yellow one, the fat pink one, and a tiny orange one there. Just going to quickly find my little starfish that I want to put down. And there are so many options in this little book to just fill in little gaps. So it's a really handy one to have. So right now you can't really see the details in the bottom section there, but I will go and outline them somewhat with my black Posca pen. But first, my fishies are getting some bubbles, and I'm just going to give each of them a little cluster of bubbles until I'm happy with how they look. I thought that 3 each would, just that stamp has 3 little bubbles, and I thought that's not enough. So, you know me, it's never enough. I'm just making those bubbles white with a Stabilo Woody pencil. It's like the Stabilo All, but it's a kid's version of it, and it comes in all colors. It's a set of I think 12 colors or so. They're really nice and creamy and waxy. And I'm going in with some white highlights, and I'm just going to finish off the faffy bits, the faffy bits that I'm always busy with. So while I'm doing this Stabilo All pencil foreshadowing, I figured out that the hype button is only available once my videos have had 4,000 hours of view time in a year's time. So if you want a hype button on my videos, make sure you watch 4,000 hours of my videos, then we'll get there. But in the meantime, please like and subscribe if you haven't done so. Please leave me a comment, and you can also head over to my Instagram and Facebook pages. I normally do shorter format videos on there that I don't show on YouTube. So if you want to see a little bit more, you can go over there and give me a like. I did link them. I will link them in the description. But if you can't follow that link, just go to Lady Michelle Journals on both of those platforms, and you will find me. All right, finishing off with a little quote. That's big, better, best. And I will chat to you again tomorrow. Okay, bye.